Thank you for joining me, Martin Heidegger and Ursula Guin, for this dinner. I know both of you have recently read my plan for where I expect to be in 6 years, and I wanted to hear what you had to say about it.
Well, Andrew, as you know, I'm Martin Heidegger, and I only deal with meta issues, so I will not focus on the particulars of your life plan. However, I will focus on the idea of a life plan and how your DAS sign discloses the forsake of which you did talk about. Andrew, thank you for having me. Personally, I have concerns not with your life goals, but the motivation behind these goals.
I say we start with you, Ursula. We should have a few drinks before we try to listen to Heidegger.
Well, Andrew, you say you want to have a wife and kids and a home all to yourself. Now, of course, I think you are playing into a preconceived notion of love, but I am more concerned with your motivation for even wanting this. Anyone who knows you knows that you say you're against capitalism, but having a wife means having a possessive relationship. And capitalists, as I say in my book The Dispossessed on page 75, they know no relation but possession. So it seems to me you must be a capitalist if the relationships you want in your life are possessive ones.
Okay, Ursula, I thought this was a dinner, not an interrogation. But let me defend myself quickly. Although I'm against capitalism, I think a relationship is a special circumstance. Possession of a wife is different than any other kind of possession, by the simple fact that I do not possess her because I bought her, or took her, or own her, etc. I possess her because she allows me to possess her, she gives herself to me, and I give myself to her, and either of us could take ourselves back at any moment.
Well, let's say that is true. I mean, maybe I could even use that to defend my own marriage. You still are setting goals for yourself based on a salary, and even your future wife's salary at times. How is having cost-based wants not proprietarian?
Sadly, Ursula, I don't live on a Naris. I live in America, and if I want anything, it's going to cost me. It would be impossible to live my life without considering cost.
This seems like a good time for me to say something in Andrew's defense. The current mood that has been given to you and the DAS signs around you is one of selfishness. Everyone around you feels they need to give themselves and everything else a monetary value, in that this is how everyday life is lived. It's not your fault that this is the current mood. Obviously, you didn't create it. They did. And your whole life you have been socialized to play into this system. Just as it is not your fault for being a capitalist, it's not these Bucknell Greenwich kids' fault that they are ignorant and privileged. That is the mood that they were given, as evident by them being encouraged to continue their behavior at Bucknell. That is to say, that it is socially acceptable. So I know that you complain a lot about them, but as someone who's read my works, you should understand that it's not their fault, just as it is not your own, and you shouldn't complain. It would be impossible for any of you to live an authentic life.
Wait, are you saying I live an inauthentic life? I'm aware of what's going on, at Bucknell and the world, and I definitely live my own life regardless of what anyone wants me to do, whether it be my parents, my professors, or any mentors that I've had. I don't fit the typical mold of what society tried to make me.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that society is allowing you to live this way. That is to say that the mood that is influencing your future is a socially acceptable one. That means that they created it, not you. You also say you want to go and be a teacher because of the problems you see in the world and America. That in itself shows just how dependent your DAS sign is on a public sphere that you didn't create and whose significance you didn't create.
I mean, I never thought of it that way. I guess I can't say for sure that I am the one giving significance to the world around me. But I still think I live an authentic life. I mean, I do what I want.
You saying you do what you want means you're missing the point, Andrew. What you want is only possible through socialization, and the principles you are falling back on are not your own and cannot be your own. You need to see that what you want is the root of your inauthenticity. What you want is a forsake of which, in a way of understanding yourself. And because your forsake of which is inauthentic, your understanding of yourself is as well. This also means that your future self is inauthentic, and as long as you are being towards that, you are being more and more inauthentic.
Not that I have to prove myself to you, Heidegger, but I know I'm authentic. Just like you, I had a turn. It was my sophomore year, and I had a friend who tried to kill himself. At that moment, I realized how meaningless most things in life I was told to care about were, such as my social standing and what idolized job I got after school. After this realization, I shifted all my goals and priorities to things that I determined mattered. regardless of what I was told.
It sounds to me like you took up a mood of anxiety. Anxiety is a point when all your previous forsake of wishes break down. Your Dasein realized its being in the world was inauthentic, and it lost its meaningfulness. It's important to remember, though, as I said on page 295 in Division 2 of Being in Time, anxiety in the face of death must not be confused with fear in the face of one's demise. This anxiety is not an accidental or random mood of weakness in some individual, but as a basic state of mind of Dasein. It amounts to the disclosedness of the fact that Dasein exists as throne, being towards its end.
Yes, that sounds exactly like what I went through. But didn't you say that was a good thing in Division 2?
What I think you are referring to is what I said on page 298 of Division 2, that in anxiety, in the face of death, Dasein is brought face to face with itself, as delivered over to that possibility which is not to be outstripped, that they concerns itself with transforming this anxiety into fear in the face of an oncoming event. Essentially, a Dasein experiencing anxiety in the face of death is on its way to living an authentic life. But you also must remember that, for the most part, Dasein covers up its own most being towards death, fleeing in the face of it. This is essentially what I think you are doing. You had a mood of anxiety, and that has led you to live an even more unauthentic life than before. You embody all these ideas just because they ground you in the world, right? Caring about the world is you grounding yourself in it. Let me interrupt you, Martin, before Andrew tries to kill himself. I'm not going to tell you you are inauthentic, Andrew, but I do think you need to look in the mirror and ask yourself if you are living a life that is consistent with what you said you believe in. You say that everyone, including yourself, should be themselves and live the life that they want to. You mentioned that you love music, but you're not making it a priority. I also know that in your perfect world, you would grow all your own food. So if that's your perfect world, and you're that passionate about music, why don't you go and live it, and do it? Do you really think that you are being that unique, and being yourself? Maybe you're being unique compared to Bucknell kids, but you're not being unique in a sense that you're living outside of the capitalist system that you say you hate. You like to teach, but you're not as passionate about it as music. You're getting a job just to get money so you can survive within the system that you hate. You're not playing by your own rules. As I mentioned in The Dispossessed, you're at a point, around the age of 20, when you have to choose whether to be like everybody else the rest of your life or to make a virtue of your peculiarities.
I am embracing my uniqueness, but I think I partially agree with Hiedegger, and that's why you're not seeing my most authentic self. I don't think I've found my most authentic self yet, but what can I really do about that? The best I can do is live my life as I want in this moment. I do agree I wish I could just play music all the time, but again, I live in America and I need money. And before you say that I could move or just live in the woods, I'll mention that I'm tied to things here. I'll admit it, I'm tied to things here, and I can't just go and live my own life. But I do think you have to agree with this, and I think you touch on this in your book, The Dispossessed. Can a social being really ever be free?
You embracing your uniqueness is different from you being a teacher. Your job can never tell you about how authentic you are, because a job is always inauthentic. As I said in The Dispossessed, I understand a person likes to do what he is good at doing. But really, it is the question of ends and means. After all, work is done for the work's sake. But on your point of the social being, I'm not sure that I follow.
Well, look at Shevek in The Dispossessed. He is obviously a social being. He has friends, he has interactions with people, and eventually he even meets a partner, Takver. And although they live on an anarchist colony, they are bound and committed to each other, not by law, but by emotion. They count on one another, and as I mentioned before, they both give themselves to each other, meaning that Takver can feel bound to Shevek in a way such that she knows she can rely on him, because she knows he has given himself to her, and vice versa. How this relates to freedom is that Shevek knows that he has given himself to Takver, and he knows that Takver counts on him to be there for her. And in that sense, he's not free to just go and disappear, because he knows he has given himself to her and that she relies on that. And they have this bond, this mutual respect. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, and in fact, I think this is what makes us human and what makes life worth living and fighting for. Obviously, I see myself in a similar situation. I'm not that attached to my family, but I am attached to my girlfriend. Maybe if we break up, things will be different, but for the time being, I'm content with my life, even if it's not as authentic as I thought it was before this dinner. I mean, just look at me last year, before we met. I was ready to give myself for the cause, give myself for everything that I believed in, for the inequality I saw in the world. And now, I see myself making this almost half-hearted attempt through becoming a teacher, just because I want to have a normal job and a normal life, so I can enjoy it with her. Maybe I'm a bad person for not living out and fighting for the inequalities I see, but I'm happy. And isn't that really the whole point?
Well, being happy is nice, but it's not the point. You need to realize that your Dasein is a clearing, and the point of being conscious of this is to be constantly listening, ready to embrace the new destiny when it arrives. If you live your life with that purpose, Andrew, you'll end up wearing a MAGA hat.
Haha, good point, Ursula. Martin's such a Nazi. I want to thank both of you for coming to dinner with me, even though now I think totally different about my life. Although I do agree with what you said, Ursula, I think Martin changed my view more than you. It's hard to say if when I took my turn, or Varelli's turn as they call it, if I started living a more authentic life, or if I just grounded myself more in reality. I can't really say I know at this point. It's definitely hard to say where I'll be 5 years from now.